democracy during President Pres Aquino's administration. The late president took time to meet with the foreign press every year, despite numerous problems she had to face, including several coups d'etats. The lively grilling continued every year through the administrations of Presidents Fidel Ramos and Joseph Estrada, who agreed to face FOCAP even when he was already grappling with scandals. The much-awaited journalism tradition, however, came to a halt starting in 2006, when former President Arroyo declined FOCAP's invitations until her term ended in 2010. It probably had nothing to do with one of our members asking about her sex life in a forum earlier, 4 years earlier. After a 5-year break, President Benigno Aquino III is breathing new life to this tradition that his late mother had so graciously supported. We hope the President would continue this annual affair throughout his term, despite candid and oftentimes testy questions from our members. Thank you and welcome.
Also at the head table, ladies and gentlemen, is the Bureau Chief of Reuters in Manila and the Vice President of FOCAP, John Mayer. And now, may I present Secretary Ricky Carandang.
Good morning, everyone. As Gurley said, on behalf of the President, we're happy to be here to face the FOCAP. It was a tradition that began in 1976, and as we said, we're reviving it today. So without any further ado, let me introduce His Excellency, President Benigno S. Aquino III.
Morning, please down. Secretary Ricky Carandang, Edwin Lacerda, Sonny Coloma, Ging Deles, Ms. Gurley Linao, Mr. John Mayer, Mr. Gabi Tabunyar, Excellencies and members of the Diplomatic Corps, FOCAP Board of Trustees and Directors, esteemed members of the Foreign Correspondents Association of the Philippines, representatives from the business sector and partners from international agencies, Chief of Staff General Eduardo Oban Jr. and the major service commanders, fellow workers in government, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. It has been 5 years since the President has stood here to talk about pressing issues and to discuss key policies that will undoubtedly shape the near and distant future of this country. So I am pleased to be in attendance today, effectively ending the drought and reviving this important tradition. Since its inception in 1974, FOCAP has stood firmly for freedom of the press. They did this at the height of martial law, a time when doing so had severe repercussions. When journalists who were choosing to do the right thing were being thrown in prison or worse, murdered in cold blood. And yet this organization has weathered plots to gag reporters or corrupt them. There were those who were much too ready to bend their ideals, and it would have been easy for FOCAP to follow suit and live fairly comfortable lives back then. But it came at the price of turning one's back on the people, and they could not find it in themselves to do that. Thus, allow me to say that I am deeply grateful for all this organization has done through the years, and that I will always respect what it stands for. It was very important to me that I attend this forum to have a good back and forth with reporters such as you. This is also a good opportunity for me to announce a few important things. As you know, the global economy has undergone a bit of a slowdown recently, and there has been some question of how this will impact our economy. There are those who are worried, uncertain about what might happen, and perhaps with the rate at which some of the world's economies are going, that's perfectly understandable. This slowdown is already making some impact on growth in the region, including the Philippines. Rest assured, the government is indeed working overtime to make certain that we do what must be done to maintain our economy's momentum. I have authorized additional expenditures of more than 72 billion pesos between now and the end of the year. This spending will provide added stimulus to our economy. Included here is a support fund for local government units, which I announced yesterday. This will be worth at least 6.5 billion pesos, which they can spend on infrastructure development, poverty alleviation, and other programs that can help the respective communities towards development. This is only one part of it. This stimulus package will give an additional 10 billion pesos to resettle and relocate informal settlers and families in danger zones. We're also allotting 5.5 billion on various infrastructure projects under the DPWH, and 4.5 billion and 1.868 billion will go to the improvement of the MRT and LRT, respectively. The criteria we used to choose these projects were simple. The stimulus will be spent on projects that will have high macroeconomic impact and will help the poor. The great thing is this. We're not borrowing any additional money to fund these projects. The funds will come from the money we have saved and from our existing borrowing program. More than that, the effects of the stimulus package will be felt not just at the end of this year, but also, in the first half of next year. In addition to the stimulus package, we are also diversifying products and markets by strengthening trade with China and other BRICS countries and other countries in the ASEAN to make up for slowdown in both the US and Europe. Many have said before that times of great difficulty also bring about great opportunity. Surely, one would consider at this point in time that the global economic slowdown is a formidable problem. But if history has taught us anything, it is that our capacity to become a great nation once more will be judged by how we confront these difficulties. So what I am saying today is we will not fold under the weight of these difficulties, and instead we will have opportunities to excel. We will do what we can within the bounds of fiscal prudence to keep the economy growing and to make certain that the effects of this growth are felt more widely. This is not the first time I have faced such difficulty. From the moment I stepped into office, I was faced with similar challenges. I looked at what I had been left with and I said, where do I start? But true enough, those in our administration kept their focus, worked hard and honestly, took no shortcuts and pocketed no money. And eventually, after many sleepless nights, we found ways to turn challenge into opportunity. While the current global economic climate is not necessarily conducive to growth, challenges such as this have not prevented us from progress before, and they will not prevent us from progress in the future. Yes, there are a number of causes for concern with how the global economy is doing, but the Philippine government is not afraid of acting on a problem just because it's difficult. Difficulty has never stopped the common one and Juan de la Cruz from striving to improve their situations. Any read-through of any history book tells us that much. Time and again, in the past 16 months, we have emerged triumphant from troublesome situations, and this economic uncertainty is no different. I know there will be long nights ahead, but if we stand under the banner of solidarity, work hard, and tap our creativity, as Filipinos have been wont to do, then we will bring this country back to its rightful place in the sun. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now we come to the heart of this program, the informal conversation with the President, which will take its form of in the question and answer. And those members of FOCAP only can ask questions. And there are two microphones there, members, one here and one the other one. And to save time, please stand. So we will not be wasting the time. But first, I'd like to open the questioning with one of our officers. Gurley, would you like to ask the first question?
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Sir, the stimulus package that you announced, what impact do you think this will have on the economy? Will this package ensure that we will be meeting growth targets despite the slowdown?
Well, this adds to the effort to be able to reach the growth targets, but at the same time, the global economic situation is changing practically daily. And one is not isolated from the world economy. Therefore, things that we do here domestically will impact our economy positively, but at the same time, we are not sure exactly what the negative effects of the world's economic turmoil will have on us, since it is still a developing story. But 72 billion will have its own multiplier effect, and this pump primes the economy to that extent.
Just one follow-up. Sir, are we prepared to announce another stimulus package if need be?
No, this is not wishful thinking. This is what can be supported by the savings, number one. Number two, this is also envisioned as the goes hand in hand with the capacity to absorb by the different agencies that will be utilizing the funds. So going beyond that might not be productive at this point in time.
Yes, John, go ahead.
Mr. President, one of the props of the economy that was expected to be in place by the second half of the year was the PPP program. And obviously some of the spending measures that you've announced will compensate for the fact that that's not up and running. But when do you expect that PPP, with the long-term benefits, will actually be up and running and the investment happening?
What was the first for January? I think it's supposed to be actually not awarded by January. Yes. Yung not running is, I think, not exactly correct. The Daang Hari project is actually on stream and should be bidded out by January, or awarded rather by January. The bidding, I understand, has already commenced. Next to that will be the NLEX-SLEX interconnection, the DOH PPP project for vaccines, and the public school buildings. But the first that will be bidded out, well, actually awarded out by January of next year, will be the Daang Hari SLEX connector.
You want to follow up?
Yeah. But some of those projects were due to be bidded out this year, and I'm wondering, is it the absence of that that's contributed to the slowdown?
Sorry, absence of?
Is it the fact that the projects aren't already bidded out and work hasn't started on them yet? Is that part of the reason behind this extra spending?
No, the funds are there, there is savings, but some of the agencies were not able to fully utilize. Hence, the savings amongst the items that were not utilized were the positions for plantilla positions not filled up. That by itself amounted to something like 30 billion pesos. And it would be foolish on our part to have this appropriation already authorized by Congress and not utilized with the benefit of growing the economy.
All right, John? Fine. The first question, will you identify yourself, John, please?
Jonah from Asahi Shimbun. A Japanese NGO has been collecting the remains of slain World War II soldiers.
Okay.
And we believe that Japan has already provided the English translation to the Department of Foreign Affairs. And I would like to get your views. What do you think of the result of their investigation, if there were indeed Mangyan and Ifugao bones that contaminated the bones that they've collected?
I've yet to receive the transmission from the DFA, but my understanding is the results were inconclusive. But I would like to see the formal report transmitted by the DFA.
So, inconclusive.
That is the raw report that I got prior to seeing the formal report.
Sorry, inconclusive that they cannot determine if there were Filipino bones or the bones were purely Japanese?
Inconclusive means that precisely, that they are not able to determine. But that is raw. I would like to see the report coming from the DFA.
Yeah, but would you prefer that Japan conduct another set of tests to make the investigation more conclusive?
Ma'am, I'm speculating on things that I've yet to see.
Okay, next one. From there. Sige, dali. Go ahead. Wait, Dana. Go ahead.
Sir, good morning. Ron Kalunsat from Kyodo News. Sir, are you concerned of possible withdrawals by foreign investments, especially in mining, following the NPA attack in Mindanao last week?
Thank you for asking that. I actually met with officers of Sumitomo Group who called on me yesterday, if I remember correctly. And they assured us that they have no intentions of pulling out. There was that request for beefed up security in their areas of operations, to which we had already advised them of the corrective actions that are being undertaken. So if the main, shall we say, victim of this whole issue has not indicated a lack of interest or a lessening of interest, then perhaps I don't foresee any other foreign investors undertaking this.
So just a follow-up, sir. There are criticisms about the plan of the military to train special CAFGUs to serve as security for these mining industries. They're saying that this could be another creation of private armies What do you say to these comments?
The special CAFCUS will be under the supervision of our armed forces of the Philippines, and there are other units that will be assigned to the PNP. They are not, how should I put it, in the control of private citizens. No? And it takes care of a very basic need. We have 250,000 roughly members of our men in uniform. They are guarding close to 100 million Filipinos. That is the exact same number of forces we had in 1986 when we had 50 million Filipinos. So we're asking the members, our citizens who are in uniform, to do double the work. And I think that would be unfair. CAFGUS or special CAFGUS will be territorial-based, will be subject to all the rules and regulations, will be under the watchful gaze of our Commission on Human Rights Chair, Reta Rosales. And we do not foresee any abuses from them, but rather they will augment the abilities of our security forces to preserve peace and order in our country.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. President. I'm Melo Acuna from China Radio International. There was this incident involving Secretary Llamas. Would you care to tell us your views about peace and order? Because for a cabinet secretary to possess an AK-47 may not bring good signals to foreign and local businessmen. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, Secretary Llamas has had several incidents that he has reported to the police in particular. Amongst them that there were people allegedly trailing his children. There were people sighted in the vicinity of their house that were not identified. Mm-hmm. And he's involved in so many negotiations, as you know. There are people who would not want these negotiations to prosper. Mm-hmm. Therefore, after the evaluation, it was determined that there was a very real threat on him. The right to self-defense is enshrined in our Constitution and even to the churches that we belong to.
Mm-hmm. Mr. President, allow me to ask you another question. Have you come across the recommendations of the maritime legal experts who met in Manila some time ago about the West Philippine Sea issues?
We still have to discuss the findings after that, but I understand that they've been mostly supportive of the position that we have adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead. Just a minute. Christine, Dario, and John, I'll be asking you to come to the microphone. Huh? Go ahead.
Yeah, Charmaine of NHK. Sir, I'd like to follow up on the question of Melo on the West Philippine Sea and the Maritime Legal Experts meeting. It seems that after the conclusion of that ASEAN Maritime Legal Experts meeting in Manila, it seems to us that the Philippine proposal for a zone of peace, freedom, friendship, and cooperation in the South China Sea has a long way to go. They have just recommended that it will be elevated to the SOM, and then for the SOM to endorse it to the foreign ministers, and for the foreign ministers to endorse it to the leaders. The ASEAN way is like giving us a setback here on the proposal. So where do you go from here? How would you still push forward with this proposal, or will you come up with something new?
The Code of Conduct itself, or the Declaration of Principles, was in 2002. So we're now 9 years after, and at least this thing is moving. And we have committed to ASEAN centrality with regards to handling any, multilateral talks. So I think we are on track. There is a need for consensus. We are a very diverse group of 10 countries that have various parochial concerns, but at least the agreement to move this along is, I think, a very significant step, even at this point in time. Then, as I said, perhaps it will be best if the Secretary of Foreign Affairs will give you the details, but there are other options with regards to how to handle the West Philippine Sea issue.
So would that option still include going to the ITLOS and 4 other options that may be made available to us?
I've answered the ITLOS question in a previous fora. There is a need for China to agree to joining us when we bring it to ITLOS as part of the pertinent provisions of UNCLOS, if I'm not mistaken.
Sir, I was very specific with the zone of peace, which is different from the declaration of the Code of Conduct, because we propose this so that we will identify a specific area where the DOC or the Code of Conduct can be applied. So like a joint cooperation area, but this has not been very well accepted. How do you go? How will we proceed with your proposal then?
Why do you think it's not been very well accepted? we think it's the reverse. No, there has been an agreement as far as we're concerned with the ASEAN brothers. But again, the fundamental question with regards to China and the 9-dash line and incompatibility with UNCLOS is still there. No? And I think the focus should be that we are not escalating tensions to the point that conflict becomes a logical conclusion. Adherence by all parties concerned to declaring a zone of peace is, I think, a very healthy development and refocuses everybody on how best to resolve this without resorting to any untoward violent incidents. And that, I think, is an achievement by itself.
Just one last follow-up, Mr.
Go ahead.
Gab. As you mentioned in your speech that you'd like to see an increase of trade with China. In which areas would you like to see Chinese investments? Would it also include energy, oil and gas exploration? And how are we going to deal with the issue of the territorial dispute with them?
Thank you for the questions. Those are the questions that I'm also asking myself. Now, if you have not resolved territoriality, questions of royalty will also come in. Who gets what royalty? And how do we justify it to each of our peoples? And of course, I'm limited also by the Constitution that I have sworn to uphold and defend. So that, in terms of energy exploration in the West Philippine Sea, I think the issue of who owns what has to be resolved first. Okay. Now, with regards to other investment areas, and when we did go to China, we did agree that this is but one part of the relationship with them. There is a commitment, for instance, to help us with our tourism industry. There are two major travel agencies, one of which owns its own airline, and the other one is actually building 2 hotels already in the Philippines. So the commitment to help us in our tourism industry is not just words, no, but they're actually undertaking it. There are other ventures, heavy equipment, and truck manufacturing is also set to commence also with us. There's a whole slew of investors that are coming in, apart from energy. But they would also want to help us in terms of our energy, our water resource management, our disaster risk mitigation, and we welcome all of this assistance.
So, sir, again, what was your guideline on the energy exploration aspect of an investment from China? Would you rather put that on hold pending territorial disputes? How would you like to?
And you're talking kasi energy only in terms of gas or oil in the disputed areas. And perhaps even what we considered previously not disputed areas. But there are energy concerns, for instance, in refortifying the national grid. That might be one of the venues for the more investment. So generation was also talked about. Renewable energy was also talked about.
But definitely not on Reed Bank, where Felix, I think, would be open to a joint development with Chinese companies.
Well, as I said, I'm thinking out aloud. Okay. The state that will grant the authority will be entitled to royalties for its people, and that comes from sovereignty over a particular territory. If it's in dispute, then who actually gets the royalty? If we agree to share of the royalty, that is a diminution of sovereignty.